Can fasting heal gastritis? Yes, if done in the right way. And in this video, I'm going to show you how. My name's Diego, and in 2018, I actually got gastritis, and it was the worst possible time in my life. I was extremely stressed with a very high-stress job. I was eating poorly, and I was drinking almost 4 nights a week to compensate with all that stress. Like anyone else, I was super worried, so I went to a doctor. And that doctor basically sent me off to a gastroenterologist. And we did a whole bunch of tests. I got a endoscopy, a colonoscopy, multiple visits, put on a ton of medication, which actually made symptoms worse. And so finally, I just got fed up and I took matters into my own hands. In this video, I'm going to take you through a day in my life and show you exactly what I did when I had gastritis, and I used one main principle called intermittent fasting to help me heal. Again, with all my videos, I do not claim to be a licensed or trained professional. This is just my experience on what I went through and the things that I did that I felt like really worked to help me, and so hopefully it helps you too. Okay, so let's talk about why fasting. Now, I was in the fitness industry for many years, and I knew that fasting was something that was a really powerful thing that not a lot of people talked about up until recently. And for me, I always used it as a weight loss tool. I would just basically eat during a certain window of the day. And the more I read about it and the more research I did on gastritis, I actually found a few studies that actually correlated, basically resting your gut or fasting, not eating or processing anything through there, with elevated levels of healing. And so I decided to give it a shot. What did I have to lose? Because at the end of the day, I was in such severe pain. I had GERD, so just really bad, burps and things like that. It was just horrible. So I decided to give it a shot. And what I found actually was remarkable. It really worked for me. Now, you've probably read a few stories online or seen a few comments on some video somewhere saying that fasting is just not a good way to heal gastritis. And fasting for multiple days is not good, right? Like, that's just going to create an environment that's erosive to our stomach. But at the end of the day, we need to promote healing. We need the body to be able to calm itself down, stop the inflammation from happening, and we need to give it a little bit of a break. Think about things this way. If you have a fire that's burning and you just keep pouring gas on the fire or keep giving it wood to burn more, it's just going to keep burning and growing more and more. The same principle applies to your gut. So if your stomach is burning, it's in a lot of pain, and every time you're eating and putting stuff down your stomach, you're not giving it a chance to recover. You're making it work more, right? And when things go down into our stomach, more acid comes in to help break down a lot of the food particles and help digestion. So we're not really catching a break, especially if you're eating, right from breakfast all the way to the nighttime, even if you're eating clean. So my theory was, hey, why don't I just give my stomach a break for certain hours of the day? Now, I don't want to sound like some crackpot on here, so I've definitely included some research and evidence that intermittent fasting actually helps promote healing when done properly. I'll drop those in the description below so you guys can check them out and know that what I'm actually talking about is supported evidence done by actual doctors. So for those of you that don't know what intermittent fasting is, it's when we actually eat within a certain window of the day. The most popular one is that we are actually going to fast, or we're not going to eat for 16 hours, and then we're going to actually eat within an 8-hour window of the day. So just a sample here that I have on my phone, I'm looking through kind of my records, was that I would fast from 8 p.m., so I'd stop eating at 8 p.m., and I wouldn't eat until the next day until 12 p.m., so lunchtime. So I'd basically be eating my last meal or having my last bite right around 7, 8 o'clock, and then the next day I wouldn't eat till about lunchtime. And I found that this was the most gentle. I wasn't really that hungry. I wasn't even really eating breakfast beforehand, aside from like coffee and things like that. So this kind of worked out. It might take a little bit of getting used to, but I'm telling you, it really makes a difference. So as far as the day goes, the main and most important thing is to actually get up when you get up. Don't just sit there and doom scroll. Don't lay in your bed feeling sorry for yourself. I, for one, fell victim to this. I sat in bed in so much pain. I didn't want to get up and go to work. I didn't want to get up and do anything. And that only makes things worse, because the more and more you think about things, the more worry you have, the more stress, the more inflammation. And the more inflammation, the worse your stomach is going to feel. So the first thing I did is get up out of bed, first and foremost. I actually went over and I meditated, or I just kind of sat in silence for a few minutes, just thinking about what I wanted to achieve that day, what I wanted to accomplish, and the things that I wanted to focus on for the rest of the day. So after my meditation, I would just go get a drink of water, and then I would go for my morning walk. Now, the morning walk is crucial because on one hand, you may not feel like working out whatsoever, and that's totally understandable. Your stomach hurts, overall you don't feel well, and you're probably stressed out. I can tell you that you just need to keep moving. You need to keep the blood flowing, and it doesn't need to be a crazy high-tempo workout. We just need to get outside, just breathe in some fresh air, get in some sunlight, some vitamin D to help our body do its natural processes, and most of all, just get our mind off of things. My most favorite thing to do when I was on my walks was listen to some audiobooks about positivity or business, and other times I just walked without headphones and just breathed in the fresh air. After my morning walk, I would come in and shower, and then I would get ready for my workday. So in my previous job, I actually had to go into a workplace, and that was causing me a ton of stress. And so I made it my full-time job around that job. So I would come home from about 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock at night, and then I would eat some dinner, and I would just start cramming on the computer, applying to other jobs that I was more suited for. Now, around midday is when I took my break, and that's when I actually broke my fast, right? So I wouldn't eat from 8 p.m. the previous night all the way till 12 p.m. the next day, and at 12 is usually when I would make some lunch. Now, most people are going to resort to just being lazy and eating stuff that's not good for them. We call this comfort food, right? We don't feel well, so what's the best thing that we can eat? Something that makes us feel better or satisfies our dopamine receptors, like fast food. That is the worst thing you can do for gastritis, and I fell into that trap early on. I was not feeling well, and so I would just get my favorite meal from a store, and then I would feel instantly worse thereafter, and it was just a compounding effect. So when I started to heal and when I started to do this fasting protocol, I would just make very, very easy and boring meals. They didn't taste amazing, but I knew that I had to put in that short-term effort in order to heal long-term. So my go-to meal was a little bit of rice with some cut up chicken. Again, the smaller you can cut up the pieces of chicken, the better. You don't want to be eating large portions or large chunks of meat or anything like that your body's gonna have to break down. I did stick to red meat here and there. Ground beef and chicken were pretty much what I stayed to, along with some rice and some other non-inflammatory foods. My favorite thing in the world is hot sauce. Obviously, we cannot be putting hot sauce or anything that tastes delicious on, your food. It's got to be bland for a little bit, guys, at least until you heal. Another point to note is that how you break the fast makes a big deal. If you break your fast and you just go to town and you eat a ton of food right off the bat, that is like an avalanche, or that is like throwing a gas can into a fire. It's just going to make everything explode. Your stomach's going to hurt a ton, and it's just not a good situation. While you're dealing with gastritis, my main recommendation is to eat smaller portions more frequently throughout this fasting window. So if your window is from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., that's the time that you can eat. My recommendation would be to eat a few meals and just kind of eat them slowly in smaller portions. So I would have a little bit of rice and about 4 ounces of chicken, and that would be the first way that I would break the fast. You can even add in some bone broth in there. That's a great way to break your fast. Another thing to do is throughout the day, if you have any free time, is to keep yourself occupied. Your worst enemy is going to be boredom. You're going to fall into old ways. You're going to start Googling, researching things, thinking about what could be going on with your body and your stomach. So I make sure to stay busy. If you are at home or even at work and you have some downtime, my recommendation would be to pull up a book, go for a walk, just anything that's going to help you break the time and not fixate or stress yourself out on your current condition. Now, throughout the second or third meal of the day, usually is when I would take my supplementation. Now, remember, when you have gastritis, your stomach basically is kind of like an open wound, right? It's kind of trying to heal itself. It's not performing optimally. So when you're eating things and you're not taking in the proper nutrition, your body also is not able to break down foods in the same way that it used to be. And so a lot of the supplementation that you might be taking may not be being absorbed. And so I tried to really take things sublingually, which means under your tongue. So that's how I took my B12. You can pretty much find any sort of liquid B12 out there, and that'll be really sufficient for you to kind of get that energy. The thing that I really think went a long way for me in helping heal my gut was my soil-based probiotic. This was recommended to me by an actual doctor, and I took that advice and I found myself a really highly researched probiotic that I still use to this day. That's really helped my gut heal, and anytime I feel like my stomach is kind of going back the way of gastritis or just not feeling great, or I'm just feeling constipated or whatever, I'll go ahead and take the probiotic for a few days and I'm back to normal. Now, as you approach the end of the day, you're going to notice that a lot of your friends and family members also want to go out and have dinner or just prepare you a big meal. It's important to let them know what's going on and actually refuse that. Again, if you're only eating from 12 to 8, make sure that that last bite happens right around 7:30. We want to make sure we give the body the proper time to digest the food and recover before we start eating again the next day at 12 o'clock. This kind of goes without saying, but eating before bed is probably the worst thing you can do. So don't go to bed right after your last bite. I would wait a few hours to let your food digest. If it's absolutely necessary, if you're going to bed early, maybe adjust your window. Now, if you're like me and you go to bed around 8:30 or 9 o'clock, my recommendation would be to potentially move your window or adjust it, right? So instead of 12 to 8, maybe you can do 11 to 7, or just kind of play with your timing a little bit for whatever works for your lifestyle. But again, the principle you want to follow is 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of a window where you can potentially eat. Now, a lot of people mistake intermittent fasting for a tool for weight loss. And the truth is that it does work for weight loss, but that's not our goal here. Some of you folks are probably experiencing weight loss as a symptom of gastritis, and your weight has gotten really, really low. So what I would recommend for you folks is use that 16-hour window as a time to really heal your body. And then during the 8 hours that you can eat, make sure you're getting enough nutrition, right? So don't starve yourself. Don't eat just 2 to 3 meals. Just break up your meals. Maybe it's 5 to 6, but more frequent, right? Maybe every couple hours you're eating a smaller meal. We definitely still want to keep the calories up and keep the nutrition going. We don't want to starve ourselves. That's not the intent of what we're doing here. All right, guys, so in summary, intermittent fasting in this capacity is not meant to help us lose weight. It's meant to give our stomach a break. Now, every single person is different, and so I would definitely recommend trying this out if you've been struggling with gastritis, especially for a long time. Intermittent fasting combined with clean eating is absolutely the recipe that I would recommend for anyone that's trying to heal their gut and just has not been successful so far. Now, I know a lot of you folks who have gastritis watch my videos. I'm super curious. If any of you have tried this and have had any success, I would love to hear it in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you feel better soon.